Today is June 17th, 2007. I am Cassie Potasic, and it is a pleasure to conduct this interview for the Dakota Memories Oral History Project in Devils Lake, North Dakota. Can you please tell me your full name?
Full name is Balzer Lawrence Kurtz.
All right. When and where were you born?
Right in this house. I was born right in this house. I live in the house my mother and dad lived in. I bought the house back after my dad passed away.
And what year were you born?
I was born in 1928, November 30th, 1928.
Have you ever heard an interesting story about your birth?
Yes, I had quite an interesting story about my birth. It goes back my mother when I was born, and I had the baptism in St. Joseph Catholic Church. And my godfather and my godmother that I had there, my name was actually supposed to be Anton. My mother always wanted an Anton. Well, anyway, when we went to church, I understand, we went to church, and I was baptized. Well, back in them days, the Germans would take if you're the godfather, you took his name, or the other way too, with the godmother. But anyway, when it came around to me, to what's the boy's name, my godfather said Balzer. Well, my godfather's name was Balzer Eisenzeber, so I was named Balzer in my baptism. Well, on my birth certificate, I read Anton, but Balzer I went with until I went through the Korean War in 1951 and 52. I spent a year there, and anyway, everything I've ever done up until I was 22, 24, it was always Balzer. And so when I got out, I had a friend who was a judge, so I talked to a friend of mine that was a judge. He said, you should change it then. So I had to advertise in the paper 3 times. I was changing my name from Anton to Balzer, see? But I went with Balzer all the time, so I had to go through that court system to change my name to Balzer. But my baptism reads in Bismarck, Anton. That's the way I went with it.
Can you share some of your earliest memories with us?
Of
your childhood?
Childhood, raised right here in this house. Well, when I grew up in this house, it wasn't this big. There were 3 bedrooms. Now it's 2, But I mean, there was only 2 rooms, and then we had dug out our basement, and we ate downstairs in the basement and that there. And actually, there were 11 of us in the family. There were 13, and 2 died at birth and stuff. But there were 11, and at the most that I could see that, after my dad had built the bedrooms on and stuff, that there were 9 home in the house here, see. And as you go, they were getting married and that, but I was the 5th in line. I was the oldest boy to all of my brothers and sisters, because my 2 older brothers were in the Army at that time. So this is where I was born, in this house, and like all the siblings and that, and they all were right here in this house and that, see. And that's just where we grew up, between upstairs where we're sitting right now and downstairs in the basement. We ate downstairs. We had a Walton table where all 11, would sit, or 9 would sit. And then we had a cook stove down there. My mother would cook down there. And so, and I remember when I was younger, I slept with my 2 older brothers downstairs. We all slept in one bed, see. And that's when they left into the Army, like I say, I had the bed then, because, but everybody wanted to go from the basement upstairs. They wanted to sleep upstairs in the house. And I think I must have been 18 the time I moved up here in the house. But it was a great life, growing up. There was tough times in that. But out of, say 11, out of 11 kids here, right back in the yard and that there, we had a cow all the time I was growing up into the 50s. So we had our own milk. We had our own calf. We'd get a calf. So we had our own meat in the fall. And my dad would buy a couple of pigs, on that there. So but we're gardening. We gardened all summer long. I always tell a story about going outside in the spring, and we kind of shake. I thought, oh boy, it's really sunny out here. Boy, it's really nice. Spring is here. Well, now we got ready for winter. because the garden started to go. And we had to grow garden, and you had to take care of the garden. We hauled ties home to burn from the railroad. My dad worked for the railroad, the Great Northern Railway, and we hauled ties all summer long. And when the trains used to coal up, we'd go up there. We knew when they coaled, and anything they spilt over, we could pick up. See, and I think the whole west side where we live now were all German Russian that worked for the railroad. See, back in that day, and it was quite an experience growing up, living down here on the west side. There. And like I said, they were all railroad workers, and a lot of them worked for the railroad, lived up in the east part of town. But, like I say, when we were living here, and there were 11 kids, we'll say, but 9 at home. And I always remember we talk about hobos and bums, and the hobos used to come to the house, and we're sitting eating. There were 2 type hobos. I don't know what that was. Some my mother fed outside. Nobody ever left this house, and we were rich from a long way, but we raised everything. And the hobos would come, and some got to eat at the table with us, and most of them sat outside. And my mother would feed them, out there and that there. But the slick way it was going on, we had a fence all the way around this yard. And standing out there, as you went out the gate, there was a pole there, square. The hobo had a chalk. He'd exit on the pole. So then the railroad back there, the Great Northern, had a jungles where the hobos and the bums would come in on. The hobos and that. The hobos would come in, they're looking for work. And the farmers used to go back by Harrington Brothers stockyards and pick them up to go out on the farm and work. Well, these people were looking for food and stuff, and they'd come by, and my dad and mother would feed them. And they'd mark the pole, and then they'd go back to the railroad and tell them, boy, go down to the Kurtz's, they'll feed you. And so we had more coming in, but they always fed them, maybe a lot of soup and all that. But I can't ever remember my mother and dad turning one away. We fed them, as they would come in that. But they wanted to work. They always asked for work, say, if they could do something. Well, when you got kids around, everything else, this whole yard was garden. This place, it's on a 75-foot lot. The whole thing was garden. Then we had a garden it'd be down there where on the south side, there was nothing built there at that time. We had a garden where Balzer and Zimmer had a farm. And we had a garden down there was probably half a block wide and maybe just about a block long. And all we grew on that garden were potatoes, corn, pumpkins, and watermelon. And some other, squash and that. They'd raise that. And really when we had that garden and stuff, we're into there, we'd come off of that garden, and we raised cabbage and tomatoes and that in the yard here. But we'd come in the fall, we raised between 75 and 100 bushel of potatoes. And we dig them in the fall by hand and bring them by a wagon home, clean them, let them dry. And then we'd leave them out in the barn. And then we'd bring them up and put them down the basement. And we put 75 to 100 bushel potatoes down there. Now we pickled 3 55-gallon barrels of watermelon, and probably 2 of them, and 3 barrels of cucumbers, sour cucumbers. And then we'd roll them and take care of them outside. And in the fall, when it got real cold, we roll them up to the house, slide them in the basement. And in the spring of the year, when we shook and came out, there was enough potatoes. My dad always said, don't eat those potatoes over there for seed. So then the potatoes were just about all gone. The watermelon, cucumbers and everything. My mother canned everything, And sometimes I wonder how my mother got all that time to do all that stuff, the can and there. Right where you're sitting right now, there's where we lined up there. Probably 8 of us were around. Every night, 8:30, we had to line up for prayers. We prayed the rosary first, then we said our prayers. And they had to be by 8:30. And my mother would sit in the chair, and she'd be darning socks that had holes in and stuff, And she'd be up to 12 o'clock or more. And the next morning she was up at 5 o'clock again. Because my dad went to work, on the railroad by 7, on that there. So everything was there. But the kids he had a list. The kids did most of all the gardening, picking potato bugs, hoeing and all that. There was a system. You had to get your work done too. It was run, or you didn't get to do anything until you had your work done. But back we had our chores to do. The girls did all the housework and stuff, and the boys, we'd haul ties home, coal, all that, all summer long to get ready for winter. We burnt 80% of wood. Were ties where they were cedar ties. They weren't creosoted back in that time. That's why you could burn them. But today, you get the railroad ties and they're creosoted and they burn really hot. So that we never burnt that. And then, like I said, if you had money, we'd buy some lignite coal. The stove sat right here to stoke the heater up. I tell my kids I wake up in this house and go wash, and they had a good inch ice on the water bucket to break the ice out, that it was cold in the house. And to this day, I'll always sit with my coat on when I'm inside, as long as I'm sitting. It's a habit from way back. You got into a house, and I left my coat all the time because it was either too hot or too cold, but most of the time it was too cold. And my dad and I think, I'm trying to think of my mother, they got an oil furnace downstairs. That was really great for them, that they have a furnace and that. But otherwise, the stove sat right here in the living room, and the cook stove was out in the kitchen, in the dining room there, that, they were upstairs here. Until they moved the cook stove downstairs, and then my first stove my mother got was a bottle gas stove with coal and wood you could burn on one end. I have that stove to this day. See, when I bought the house, that was all in there. So I still have that stove that my mother had, So it was hard back in them days of growing up, that there was always, like I say, they were never short of work. There was always something to do, and that there. But I thought, back in there, work all the time, no play. I loved to play ball, And there was a lot of times you couldn't play ball because my dad always had work lined up for you, And like I said, if you had a garden, this whole yard was 75 feet. It was all garden, just enough room to walk, to the alley or back to the barn where the cow was at. Otherwise, it was garden. And so that way there, like I said, I'm probably that way today. I don't know how to stop and relax because I'm always doing something, working, on that there. And that's, you're retired. I'm retired now. And it's, I still got to have something to do. When you get outside, you're always monkeying around in that, So that is a plus. When you retire, you got to have something to do. You just can't sit there and watch TV. No. But like I said, my mother, I really love my mother and my dad. Because, we talk to this day about kids, how you say, I love you, I don't think I ever heard my dad say I loved you. But I knew he did. Because he provided for me, and that. And today, you tell your kids you love them. Well, back there, I think that we were probably brought up in there where I love you was a sign of weakness. Personal opinion, see? So you never really said it. See, even when I was in the Army, came home from the Army and that, or left for the Army, he never told me that. But I knew it because, like I said, they provided all the time for you,
Can you tell me more about the kind of person your dad was?
My dad was a hard worker. My dad came from, I believe, everybody come out of Odessa, Russia. My dad was 18 years old when he came to this country. He came through out of New York. I'm at a blank now.
Ellis Island?
Yeah, Ellis Island. Now, I have a grandson that was at Ellis Island, and he called here and we were talking, and he did find, and my daughter, my oldest, third oldest daughter was at Ellis Island, and she found my dad there that he came through there, and so did my grandson and that. So that was quite an experience for him, But he came here at 18 years old. He left, got out of Russia, and he couldn't talk English, and he ended up over at in the rugby country or round towner. And that there, so that's where he more or less, he met my mother over in that country. See, that's where he met her. But my dad worked all the time. There was never a slack period. My dad would work for the railroad all day long and come home and work till 10. And I was like my mother and my dad, always seemed to find time to sit down and have coffee and bread or something. They'd sit there and talk in the evening after we went to sleep and stuff. But we had to pray. So that's one of the, religion was a big thing, I believe, for them people when they came from Russia, to have freedom of religion and that, and freedom to work. So we enjoyed it. I mean, with that, 11 kids, and a lot of hand-me-downs, nothing new, and that. I always tell the joke, I said I'd have been a Catholic priest, but I only got to church every seventh Sunday. It was my Sunday for the shoes. And probably got to church more. I probably could have been a priest. But I only got to church every 7 weeks because it was my Sunday for the shoes. That's a joke now. No. But with that joke, we always had a dress pair of pants, a dress shirt, and dress shoes. You put the best on for church. But when you got home, it came off and it was put away in the closet for the next Sunday. See? Otherwise, the other clothes, the day-to-day stuff, And I always had Levi's. I got them on now, but I used to hate them because, you wear them till they turn white. Now today they turn them white for you, all washed out in that. And I hated that because the other kids kind of teased you about it, And that's just, part of it, growing up in that. But I don't know, like down here, we're talking about West Side, everybody was in the same boat. There weren't a lot of people. There were some people up in the other end of town with money, you know what I mean? But they all were the same down here, and they seemed to all get along. But like I said, everybody had a garden, My mother would bake on Wednesdays, I think, 30 or 35 loaves of bread for the week. And then she'd wash clothes. Never had a machine. Yeah, I had down in the basement. She would wash. We'd haul water home for her and that, and she'd wash clothes.
How did she wash clothes?
She started out with the wash tub and the scrub board and that. And then my dad had got a wash machine, a second-hand wash machine. I think she thought she died and went to heaven with all them kids and all them clothes to wash, But she washed with white clothes started first, and then you went down next and next and next. And your Levi's and the work clothes were always last. See. Yeah. But it was a lot of work for your mother. I don't know, now when I think of it, we took that for granted back in them days, And let me say, there was, maybe on the 4th of July you got a day where you could relax a little bit. But most of and Sundays. Yeah, and the house wasn't, exactly like this today. The linoleum was on the floor, and when that wore out, my mother would paint it and then stipple it, so you had another run at it. But now today you live with carpet, and nice inlays, and oak floors and stuff. Yeah, and today is much, much nicer. But again, I think we had more time in the old days to visit, just like we're doing now, visiting, talking about things. I get together with my friends. There are different places, We get together in the evening at a party or something and start talking about the old days. I mean, just laugh all the time, on the things we used to do. And nobody really had a lot of money back in them days. 10 cents would take you to the show, or 9 cents, on a Saturday. But we never got to go. We didn't have the 9 cents. No. But otherwise, like I say, no, I'm not complaining, I really had a good mother and dad. And I'll be the first to tell you, that I didn't think they were so good. When you're young, do this, do that, you're always busy. And like I told you, I like to play ball, And there was no time really to play ball. I had to sneak the time to play, you know. And I played baseball and I played fast pitch softball. I played both of them, you know. Then I boxed for 4 years too, see. And my dad never went to a sport, but he did go when I was boxing. I had a brother, my second brother made All-State in football, but the furthest he'd ever get to the Roosevelt Park, he'd sit up on the tracks and see if he could see the game from there. He wouldn't go down there, you know. Didn't want to see anybody that he was resting, that he wasn't working. So that's that in there. But he did, when I was boxing, he went to the boxing matches and that, see.
How old were you when you were boxing?
17. I started 17. I finished when I was 20. I hold the North Dakota National Guard 4 years as a middleweight. And I hold regional 3 years as a welterweight and a middleweight. And I hold state champion 2 years, you know, boxing. I enjoyed that. I had a chance to turn professional, but I turned it down because I never been away from home. Now, you laugh, you know, people laugh. Never been away from home. And back then, have you ever been homesick? As you're listening you're on this, you know what I mean when you're homesick, see. And the furthest I got away from home when I was in Korea. And I was with another guy from town and we separated there and I thought my whole world collapsed when he left me, you know. But it didn't take long to grow up, you know, when I was there. And you took care of yourself, you know. And that kind of the homesick, I was always homesick. I'm not going to, you know. Always wanted to go home. I had a chance in 1952 to try out for the Olympics over there. And I went to fill the papers out in Seoul. And these guys were with me. And I got in this big building. It was just full of people. And I signed the papers and I asked him, you know, where would you go if you could win? He said, you have to stay in the Army another year. And I told him, no, I don't want to do that. I said, I want to go home. I'm homesick. So I walked out of the building and never did then, see. That I had about 3 months yet to go home, see. So that ended that, you know. And now today, sometimes you wish you would have, but like I say, it's just when another inside of you takes over. And I wanted to get out of there, you know, because you never know in there. And you'd have to stay in the Army. I don't think I'd had to do anything but box, you know. But I really was homesick, see. And the Army was I had a good experience, you know, something that come along. But I'm glad I did go, you know, like we have a war now going on right now. And it's hard on the parents. And I think more today they're husband and wife. When I went and left there, I was single. And the other guys were all single with it, you know. And so you didn't have a wife to worry about, see. And I understand when I watch TV and these girls are crying, you know, it's hard, and they got a couple of little kids and that. Hey, it's tough when you're struggling, you know, and that to make ends meet, see. But I hope that's over soon.
Right, we're going to step back just a little bit. Can you
Sure.
tell me about your mother?
My mother was a Keller. Her maiden name was Louise Keller. Her parents, my mother came to South Dakota. And she was a young girl, and you know, and she was born in South Dakota, in Aberdeen, South Dakota. She was born there. Her dad came from Odessa, Russia, and her mother. And my mother's family, there were 10 in her family. Until her mother, we talked about how my grandmother died, you know, and there were 10 of them. And then my grandfather got married again, and my mother and her older sister had a job in Towner, working for a baker, taking care of, and my grandfather asked them to come home to take care of the younger kids in the family, so they had to come home and take care of them. And I suppose as a young girl, 18, my dad was 18, my dad was 20 and she's 18. And my dad and mother met, and they got married, you know. And they were working on the farm over at Fulda, and that's where my grandmother's buried. I mentioned to you she's over at Fulda and that. But they came then to Devil's Lake. My dad went to work for the railroad, and when they first moved to Devil's Lake, they lived on West 8th Street down there. And then he bought this two rooms, And from there on, my dad did everything from the dug out the basement, we did, and all his things, worked on this house. And my dad worked all the time on it. My dad came from Russia and couldn't speak English, couldn't read or write, but he did all of this stuff. Heck of a carpenter. Something he inherited, I suppose, from his dad or in his genes and stuff. But my dad could build anything. And I have some brothers like that too. They can build anything. All of us, all the boys can do things like that. I have a brother. My older brother was a carpet layer, and my brother behind me was a carpet layer, and then my second brother was a mechanic at Fleck Boners in Bismarck. So they can all do carpet work, do mechanic work. It's just something that you can do, and you don't walk away from it. Plumbing, it may take you a little longer, but you can get it done. See. And my mother was, like I said, it was a saint, with 11 kids. And you got to take that 11 kids and being pregnant at a time running the household. And back then there was no fans, to speak of, and it was hot. In the 30s it was hot. Like I said, when I was at my grandfather's, I can still hear the wind whistling through the screen doors and the screens on the house. And it was hotter than heck, And they're blowing, in the 30s and that there, yeah. And that's the way it was here. I was born in 28, so I had the 30s, can remember some of the stuff in the 30s, quite a bit. But my mother always said, you guys have always had plenty to eat. I said, yes, Ma, but I'm still hungry. So we did. We did, We butchered, you'd buy some pigs. I never knew what a pork chop was. That all went into sausage because you'd say the hams and stuff. But everything else was put in the sausage because that went further down the line, For all them kids, that you fed more kids with sausage than you could pork chops. But my mother was busy, I would say, exaggerate, 14 hours a day like a darn. But in the later years, as my mother and dad, my dad retired, it was nice to come over out and sit out in the kitchen and sit there and visit with him. My dad had, after he retired, he spent a lot of time with my wife. I lived a half a block away. And I don't know, he'd go over there and they'd have coffee. My wife is Norwegian, and they had coffee and they'd sit there and talk. So my wife knows a lot about my dad, how he grew up and everything, So that was interesting because we talk and she throws out things that my dad had told her. Well, we sit there as boys, hey, how do you know that, see? Well, he told her, And we never had that much time to sit there. That's the problem. We never sat and asked our dad, how was it? How did you really get here? We did in the later years. See, we talked about that stuff. But as growing up, no. That was just like you never really had time, And if you're going to find out anything, you had to find out in the later years of life because they didn't want to talk about it. They were too busy doing other things, And really, like I said, I worked for the railroad too. And really, I worked on a bridge crew, building B&B, building bridges, siding depots and all that. But I remember coming home after working all day and I had to pump 55 gallons of water so it could sit out there for the next day so my dad could water the cucumbers. And that was a chore after I got home. And then I fooled my dad one time. I had worked over on the Sioux line and I run into a pump jack out in the country and I bought it from a farmer for $5 and I took it home and I hooked it up to the pump. And I went and got a motor from a wash machine and I got a belt on it. I showed my mother how to run it, so she pumped water for me when I was at work. How we got it to run. And it pumped, did the job. See, and my mother would come out, you had to put the belt on the pump jack first. Then in the pulley good motor, put it on the motor first. Then get it on the big one, and then you'd slide it on there, and the pump would start working. But our refrigerator, like the well back in the yard, was our refrigerator. Everything was hung down in the well, either in a pail, for being cooled, because we didn't have a refrigerator in that. And the milk was all cooled in the well that you'd put down in a pail. And that's where we drank a lot of milk. I would say growing up, 90% was all milk. We drank milk all the time, see. And to this day, I go to the dentist, I got to tell you this. And we drank a lot of milk, a lot of flour, we had potatoes and that. But the dentist up at there told me, he said, you Kurtzes have the nicest jawbones I've ever seen. Your sister comes to me, your brother comes to me, and you come to me. And you all got good jawbones. And I told him what we do. We drank milk, all the time. And that's what we got, And, like I said, flour, potatoes, noodles and watermelon, people you talk to know about things like that. But everything was made out of flour and potatoes and that were, and milk that you ate. Everything was made from that. Just about everything that you ate was, from that stuff. And like I say, there wasn't a lot of meat around, or anything like that. But it was good. I still like noodles and watermelon. I like the old dishes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, kucha and all that. I like all of that, see. Pigs in the blanket, I like that. In German, they call it Halupsi. Yeah. No, but it was all good, all good. And like I said, I could sit here and I couldn't tell you how much I appreciated my mother, after I got older. Because that lady worked, I'd lay on the floor out there under the tables, just maybe 5, 4, sleep on the floor, and my mother's ironing clothes. To go, my mother ironed shirts for people downtown, wash shirts for them and then iron them and that. So she made maybe a quarter a shirt, got for her washing and ironing it, say. But she did that. But my mother was home all the time with all the kids. Never worked out. Maybe that's why you got 11 kids, like I mentioned to you, And I think the man upstairs has looked down on us, and smiled. Because there's 11 of us. There were 11 of us. My older brother, John, was married 50 years. My brother, Richard, died. He was the youngest in the family. And then my brother Joe has been married for over 50 years. Then my sister Betty has been married over 50 years. Then my sister Wally lost her husband, and I think she was married about 30-some years when she lost her husband. I'll be married 54 years in August. I follow my sister. My brother Timmy's been married 50 years. And then my sister Rosie's been married 50 years. And my brother Julie has been married 50 years. My brother Cass has been married 50 years. And my sister Marion has about 2 or 3 years to go to be married 50 years. So out of them, we've all been married 50 years, except my youngest brother and my sister that lost her husband. Otherwise, 9 of us have made, 50 years of marriage. So it's got to tell you something about religion and, And my older brother was married to a girl that turned Catholic. My second oldest brother was married to a girl that turned Catholic. I'm married to a girl that's Lutheran. Lutheran to this day. She's Lutheran and I'm Catholic. Going to be 54 years marriage, And the rest of them are well, my other ones are all married to either Catholics, and that there, see. But 4 of us were, and really I could say to you, religion. Hey, I told you I went to church for 16 years straight. But I go to church, in there. But religion has never been a problem between my wife, Lutheran, and me being Catholic. That's never been a problem in anything. If we, you discuss, and if I told you didn't have an argument here or that, And that's what I think the thing there, the secret of life is understanding. If I take time to understand her, she's got to take time to understand me. And the thing is there, I think that's where it all, if you have something, you have your spat over and done with and you're off to something. But you're always together. And today it seemed like we can't talk. First thing they do, I think, is look for a lawyer, and that. My man is going to sleep behind you. I'm just laughing, having fun. You got to have fun. No. But really, and I emphasize on how good God has been. My friend, Father Gerald, and he was a dear friend. And Father Wilhelm now is leaving, to go to Fargo. And that. He's a good friend. But I had told Father, I got to tell you this, because a lot of guys never tell you this, but Father Wilhelm came here 5 years ago, and he told me he wasn't going to leave for 7 years, but he's leaving after 5. I told him when he came, I walked back, I usher in church, and I said, Father, we're never going to be good friends. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I had a good friend who was a priest, and I'm not going to get close to you. I want you to know that. And I suppose about 2 years later, 2.5 years later, I walked, ushering in, he came back, and I said, Father, don't get too close to me because I think we're getting closer. And the other night, he's leaving now, and we are friends. So that makes it nice. See, he's leaving tonight. It's on Sunday. We're having a going away. They're having a going away party for him and that. And really, and we are good friends. It's something I didn't want to happen, but it did. And I'll miss him while he's gone, But that's the way things go. I mean, you get involved in your church, you get involved in ushering. I don't mind doing that, and that there. In a roundabout way, I tell people I watch your kids grow up. People come to church and they're not married, like I am, and the wife will bring the kids to church, Man, I ushered for a long time, and I talked to a lady not too long ago, and I said to her, Jay, I see your kids don't come to church with you anymore. I said, I watched them grow up. Yes, she said, they're old enough now to go by themselves. Makes me old, but you see a lot of young people coming in there. And this day, back when I went to church with my dad, we all went to church. There's 11 kids there, you're all going to church. And I know a lady that's got 7. And she's come to church, and I talked to her, I know her well, and talked to her. And this day, you don't have 7 kids. My words, I say to you, kid, you're never going to be lonesome when you get old. See, I said, that's what you got to think about. Then things will go on. Just look up, the man upstairs always provides a little more for you to eat. Seems like if you got 11, you can feed 12. See? And that's what's nice, There was always some left over for one more. Even my own family, see? It seemed like there was always some left over, see? And that was the same thing at home here. Yes, you didn't have all you wanted to eat, but you ate, And you kid a lot. We get together, and when all of us were alive, we get together, have it right here in this house, and start at 7 o'clock or right after church and that there, and you sit there and laugh all night long, Then eat about 10 o'clock, and it's really nice to sit there and reminisce about the hard times and the good times. Say, and you're visiting all the time, which we don't do that much anymore.
What are some of the things you talked about when you'd reminisce?
How tough it was to grow up. Yeah. And I said, no, my mother, and I said, my mother, I ain't gonna say, I said, I was so tired of having patches on my pants, patches all over and that. You buy them today with them patches on. And my mother, I told her a joke in there, and she slammed the table. She said to me, I remember when I sewed patch on top of patch. That's how sincere she was about it. But there's a joke in there, see? And 6 months later, I told her the same jokes, and she hit the table the same way and told me how she sewed patch on top of patch, saying that she never got the joke, so my brother explained it to her, and that she laughed, But really, that's all she knew was patching, patch, patch, patch. See, and that's where I learned to fight. by kids teasing me about patch pants, you know. And now I look and they got the knees tore out, you know. And I had a boy sitting over here, not this winter, a wrestler in school. He come and never knew him before. He came with my grandson. Tore out here, tore out in the pants. And all. Jesus, kid, I said, you must come from a poor family like I did, you know. But I said to my mother, I had them babies patched up a long time ago. You wouldn't be walking around like that, you know. And my wife give me heck for talking to, you know, kidding him around. But that boy and myself are good friends today. I don't care where he sees me, but he always says hello to me and that, you know, really. All over the kidding about patch pants. I mean, you see kids with patches on the rear, and you know, there's no hole there, but they put them there. The knees, you know. I paid $20 or $40 to go to a concert in Grand Forks, Chester Fritz. And, gee, I should have thought of the name before I brought it up. Gary Morse. He came out with a smoking jacket on, his arms back, and his pants, the knees were all tore out of his pants. Well, that to me is not, you know, when you're used to no holes in the pants, you know. And he had holes in his pants. I said, this guy ain't doing too good. No. But my mother was the same, really. I don't know how to express anything more about my mother.
Was she an affectionate person?
Yes, you know, yeah. Mm-hmm.
How did your parents cope during hard times?
Boy, a lot of praying, you know. But like I said, my dad, when he came at 18, you know, from Russia, you know, my dad knew about growing gardens or surviving, you know. And then people over there, they went to Russia to farm. I think it was Catherine the Great that got them to come to Russia to show them people how to farm. That's why all these Germans from Russia are in the western part of the state, you know, and that most are all farmers, see. They're self-sufficient farmers. They got everything to survive. Maybe they come to town in the fall and get some coffee, sugar, and something that they need, the flour. Then they go back home for the winter. That they never got off of the farm in the wintertime, see the snow. But no, all I can tell you is my dad and mother, we had a garden, and I mean gardening. And I never wanted to see another garden. But right now I got a place back there I built out of railroad ties up high so my wife could sit in a chair and plant, you know, and she's plant cucumbers and different things back there, say tomatoes and that. It's just something to do. But back in them days, that was necessary. There was no canned goods, you know. One of the big cries of me, I was a Lone Ranger fan, you know, back in them days, and Lone Ranger was on, and Eddie's Pandandy bread was the big to sell. And I always said to Mother, can't we get some of that nice soft bread? Because when you get homemade bread, within a few days it gets hard, you know what I mean, and that there. And it's good after the first couple of days, you know. Bread out of an oven is nothing like putting butter on it, you know. Yeah. But like I said, we ate a lot of bread, a lot of potatoes, a lot of cabbage that we grew, a lot, you know, the potatoes, everything we grew. And my dad, there's another thing. The PV elevators, or Farmers Union elevator used to be. In the fall, my dad would get done at work, and he had the friends over in that elevator, and they ground flour and everything over at this elevator back when I grew up in that, see. My dad went over there and he'd unload coal. You know, they had big, long line of coal bins and that, and he unloaded coal. And he'd unload coal, and us kids would help him. And when he was all done, in there, he probably earned maybe 12, 14, 1,600 pounds of flour. 16 sacks, 100 pounds of flour. And then he also earned bags of puffed wheat, were probably 2 by 2, 4 feet high, and he earned them. So we'd probably take 6 bags of flour home, maybe 6 bags of puffed wheat home. We had the milk with puffed wheat, you know, and the flour. So we had enough flour all winter long that he had already paid for that was over at the elevator, see, at the mill. And we'd go over in the sled in the wintertime and haul it home. But most of our meals were flour, you know what I mean. The flour, potatoes, and that. Macaroni, But that's like I say, you could. I like hot dish to this day. Macaroni hot dish. You know, I like that. I like that. You know, and they always say when you go to a funeral, you get funeral hot dish. See, that's macaroni hot dish. See, no, but I love that to this day. See, and there was all different kinds of hot dish. You know, you could do in that there. But like I said, the big thing was starchy. You know, the that we ate. You know, the flour and that. Yeah. But see, he had all that worked out through the big gardens we had, and he worked all that out working. Like I said, there was no really rest. In the wintertime, you didn't have that much to do but shovel the sidewalk and that. But then you get out, you're tired of winter, you want it warm, get outside, shake yourself. Yeah, oh boy, good. Now we're ready for winter again. See, that was all the time. Then you had to do your schoolwork, everything else, you know, and that with it. See, no, excuse me. But it was like I said. How do I say to you? You know, you watch on Prairie Public. You know these ladies that have this here, and they have Kasnifla. You know, they have Schmutzkikla. You know, that's a grease cookie, I call it. You know, made out of hamburger and stuff, spiced hamburger and stuff. And they got elephant ears in English. You know, that's fry bread. You know, and that's see. I always say the Indians have fry bread. The Indians got the fry bread from the Germans there. Now, my dad would buy wood from the Indians. They'd come in, you know, and bring wood, and he'd buy it from, you know, to burn. Well, before that Indian went home, he sat down at that table and had fry bread, or, you know, schmoozkigla, you know, that's where they stretch out the dough and drop it in the hot grease and take it out of there, and then you sprinkle sugar on it, and you roll it up and eat it with soup. Bean soup, potato soup. Potato soup was great, you know, big. But that's what you'd eat. That was a filler. And that's the same thing as noodles and watermelon. I don't know if you understand that. You had noodles made out of flour and that, and watermelon. What's a watermelon do? Well, that serves, to me, as a nectar, a drink when you ate the watermelon, see? Because you either drank buttermilk or something like that, or milk with it, or you had watermelon if you could afford watermelon. See, you ate the watermelon with it. That give you the drink that you wanted, see? The sweetness and that, yeah. And that was a lot, boy. I mean, we ate a lot of noodles and watermelon. But no, we had, like saying to my mother always said, you had plenty to eat. Yeah, Ma, but I'm still hungry, see? And as a kid, you'd burn it up, you know what I mean? See? But another thing I got to laugh at to this day when I think about it, I tell my wife, you know, I laugh about it, that I was standing out on the back steps, and I must have been about 8, 10 years old. And my mother's 2 sisters were here. And we were all standing back there, and us kids, and I didn't have a shirt on. That lady, the one lady said to them, look at that poor boy, you can see his ribs. Say, boy, he's thin. But you'd eat and run her off. I don't see my ribs now, I'd sure like to. No, see, so, you know, that's some of the things that come along. But we had also a good family, like my grandfather, you know, on the farm. My dad's sister lived in Balta, Ebacs. And the Ebacs would come to town here maybe every 2 weeks or something like that. They never failed to bring things, chickens or stuff from the farm. Yeah, to my dad, you know, for that there. Yeah, we had a big family, you know.
Were you close to your extended family?
To
Like your aunts and uncles?
yes, everybody's uncle. Uncle or aunt. You don't call them by name. All of them, yep. They'd come here. Back then, my mother's brothers and sisters would come here, you know. And my dad, like I said, he had a sister right next door. That Kurtz was his half-sister. And then Ebak, that was his full sister from Russia, you know. They would come. They were on a farm at Balta. Yeah. We had a lot. We'd go to Balzer. They'd come here, you know. They'd stay overnight and different things. They had kids. You'd play together and stuff, you know. Yeah. But it always, you know, it always, when you sat down to eat, it seemed like there was always enough to eat. Really. I don't know if the little fishies come along or the loaves of bread or, you know. But it seemed like we always had enough to eat, you know. Yes, but I was hungry. I laugh at it, but I was hungry. See? But you didn't go, you know, you say to go to bed the way it is today, they don't go to bed hungry. See? And I think, you know, maybe we're spoiled, you know, today. Nobody knows how to keep a stove going anymore, you know, if you like back in the old days, or haul water in to wash clothes, haul water out, you know, haul your drinking water in. The house wasn't modern. You had a house out and back, you know, and that there. These were all, you know, tough times with it, you know, but they were all the same, you know. Like, I never see, you know, right as I look out the window, I never seen any people that were. They were all striving, you know, but every one of them down here had gardens, you know, and that's what they lived off of, their garden and canning and that, you know. And my mother canned, when the canning season started, not too far away now, the string beans, peas, everything was, you know, all canned in jars and that, you know.
Did you ever have to help her with that?
We washed jars, absolutely. We'd wash jars out, you know, then they had to be dipped in water, you know, hot water and that. And then she'd fill them and all, then you had to put them in hot water to seal them, you know, the way they should be in that, yeah. Yeah, like sausage. He'd butcher, now we had a barn back there where we had the cow and stuff and the hay loft and all that. They used, excuse me, they had the sausage hanging from the roof of the garage, in the garage part. Up on the ceiling so the mice couldn't get at it. See, it was all smoked. But my mother canned a lot of it too. See, we'd go through that first head cheese was all smoked and that hung from the garage in there. The garage was full of wood. The barn was full of wood, I'd say. See, but everything was inside. And what we couldn't get inside, the wood was piled outside in blocks, you know, like the tie was. You'd bring them in and burn them in the big stove, see. But the meat and everything was salted either, you know, so it wouldn't spoil. And that's, see, either that or you had to can it, see. And everything was canned to a point, see. But, you know, I didn't, you know, my dad used to have a little grapevine out there. He'd make some wine out of them grapes, you know. And then they'd make probably some rhubarb wine and that there. Well, like I said, the grapes, you know, then you had to buy mix, you know, to put in to get it sugar, would ferment, you know, that, and then they'd leave it go so long, and then they would know just about, you know, then they'd skim off and my dad would take it off and have it in a big crock or jug that was sealed, 5-gallon jug, or either that in a wooden one. He had a plug knocked into the keg. You see, that to the jar. That's my dog. And then he had a copper pipe went up and into a water, and then you could see it bubbling, you know, in there. So he made his own wine of that. Yeah.
Can you tell me about your siblings?
Siblings. Oh boy. Mm-hmm. My oldest brother grew up. He couldn't talk English. He grew up with German. And when he went to school, he learned to talk English. Then growing up for him, my older brother John went into the CCs. That was a government deal. And then he was in there in the 30s, late 30s, I suppose, in there. And then he joined, that was kind of like the Army. So he joined the National Guard. And in 1941, in December, January 41, they activated the North Dakota National Guards, and he was in that, and they went to Camp Claiborne, Louisiana. And a year later, or a year and a half, 42 probably, 42, sometime 42, when the war was going on against the Japanese, they were down, they were already trained, you know, and they were the first land army. The 164th Infantry was the first land army in the South Pacific, and they were on Guadalcanal with the 1st Marine Division. And I'm 164th Infantry, And back then on Guadalcanal, if you've got to go back to the history, if they're going to give you, now my information comes from direct from Guadalcanal, from a 1st Marine Division sergeant that I met in Korea when we moved the 1st Marine Division off of the Eastern Front to the Western Front. And they were over there fighting there, and the Marines were getting licked. When they brought in, they were offshore, the 164th. The difference between the 164th and the Marines were in there. The Marines shot with a Springfield rifle, all bolt action, had to move. The 164th came in with a Grand, they called the M1 Grand rifle, semi-automatic, 8-shot rifle. All he did was pull the trigger, bang, 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 bang. Well, the Japanese were bolt also. Well, when they went on, the Marines were getting kicked, on there. And they fought for about 5 days steady with them. And this Marine told me personally in Korea, if it wouldn't have been for the 164th Infantry, they'd have wiped us out. And my checking and that, you never hear nothing about the 164th Infantry. It's like the Marines have got to have that big glory badge that they were on Guadalcanal. But you take the guys that you come off of that, the 1st Marine Division, that were on Guadalcanal, and they give credit. The 164th Infantry got a service medal from the Marine commander on Guadalcanal. They give them a medal for what they did on Guadalcanal for them, see. And then from there on, they went on to Bougainville and all these other islands with them, And I think my brother ended up over, can't even think of the Panama? No. But anyway, they went, and my brother was gone for 5 years. Never seen him. When he left that day in 1941, December, never seen him again till 5 years later. There was nothing like it is today, and that you get a letter now and then. It'd take maybe 6 weeks to get a letter or anything, from him. But all them guys, they left and never came back, I mean, they were gone for 5 years. See, and that's the way World War was. You didn't, like today now they brought some of these guys get home on an airplane, Well, I don't, you got airplanes today, that do all that. And they fly them home for 2 weeks, fly them back again, But them guys were there for the lifetime of, for the war. And they never said a word or a thing. And to me, you got to give them credit in World War II. That was a war and a half, for them guys, We lost a lot of guys, and that, and like I was telling you about the underpass, and I had a lady call me when I got that cannon, and she had over from Minnewaca, and telling me that she had a brother who was killed in Iwo Jima, see, and she told me keep going, what I'm doing, and that kind of gave me an incentive, I ain't gonna quit, and that there. But our soldiers in World War II was pure hell for them, see. And I think that our younger people, you're younger, I don't know if you know a lot about, them, the war, say my brother. It's in the past. We don't pay that much attention. The Korean War, that they call that the forgotten war, Then you got Vietnam. That was a miserable war for the ground pounder and that, What were you there for? Nothing. It seems to me like war makes money, See, and that's the whole thing. But no, I'm for the president. You can't. It's better to fight him there than it is here. If you don't know what war is like, you take that building they blew up in New York with that thing. That's miserable. You take all of them that are blown up and all that. I mean, we go here, and you're going to go leave tonight, and you're going to get something to eat with me, and you know what I mean. Nothing. We can do that. Over there, them people are looking all the time for something to eat and stuff. Now back to my brother. But that's where he was on Guadalcanal. And I'm in favor of that. That monument I'm starting down at the West Underpass is in memory of the National Guard, 164th Infantry of North Dakota. And that's what I belonged to when I went into the Korean War. Belonged to the 164th. But like I say, the things I tell you are first-handed from this Marine Sergeant, Master Sergeant, not from my brother. when there we were moving, and it just like a relationship, you get the hack and you're out of a good company that he knew about the 164th. He was just thrilled to death to talk about a guy from the 164th, see? And I was thrilled to talk to him. But anyway, John went there and he got out of the Army and stuff, and he worked for, I believe the store was Goldberg's back then. He laid carpet for him, become a carpet layer. He laid carpet for them for about 5 or 6 years. He built that basement house next door here. He got married after he got out of the service, and they moved to Bismarck, and he lived in Bismarck for quite a few years, and he laid carpet. Then he moved into Montana and laid carpet. And he laid carpet in Montana. He went and moved there. Then he moved to California and laid carpet in California for a school district. That's all he did was lay carpet, see, and that's where he retired out of, see. And then my brother Joe, he was shot in Belgium. He was wounded in Belgium, there. He got shot down below the knee, and he recuperated for a year. And then when the war ended, he was on another transport ship to go to Japan. They were going to invade Japan at that time, see. And he came back. When he was home on furlough, he got married, when he was shot. And then he got married, and the girl he married, they moved to Bismarck. And my brother was a mechanic in the Fleck Motors in Bismarck for 40 years, I think he worked there. Yeah. And he retired from Flex. He still lives in Bismarck. I think he's 84 now, my second oldest brother. And my oldest sister that lives here, Betty Herda, she went to school here, then went to work for the telephone company. Number please, or pulling all that. And when the telephone, I think, pulled out, they went to more modern stuff, all the stuff that the telephone company has come 100% with the computer and all that, see. She worked there, then went to work for the Lutheran home, at that time, as a nurse's aide, that. Then my sister Wally was the same. She worked for the telephone company. Everybody worked for the telephone company with good pay. And she worked there. And then after she got married, and then, like I say, she worked at the hardware stores, in town and stuff. And she was more of a home mother, And I think they got 1, 2, 3, 5 kids. See, and my sister Betty has had 3. 2 of them have passed away. That cancer got her daughter, and her older son was a school teacher in Lakota, and he died with a heart attack. She has a son with him now. And then my brother John had 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. And my brother Joe had 7 kids. Then Wally had, you got her the kids there. And then I come along. I'm the 5th in line. And I worked for the railroad for 16 years. And I got laid off, and we painted, shingled all the depots and stuff. When I got laid off, I painted a few houses, and I started up a business, painting business, Balzer Kurtz Painting. And I had 5 or 6 guys working for me, and we painted all over. And like I told you, I was in the painting business 45 years, and in 45 years I painted 43 churches. Some were doubled, but I painted 43 churches. And I retired from painting, Then my brother Timmy, he worked for Goldberg's. He laid carpet for that store, and when then Hesh's had it, and then he went to work for the city. He ran the city sanitation for the city, and retired from there. And then my sister Rose, she worked for the telephone company, but she lives in Minneapolis now. She got married and they moved on to Minneapolis, down. Her husband was with IBM and all different places, So she's worked on and off in there. And my brother Julie went to Devil's Lake, and he went to work, and he worked for in California. He started with Campbell's, and anyway, and then he worked for Campbell's Soup, and that. Then he went to work for Lockheed Aircraft, and he retired from there, from Lockheed, there. And then Julie, then Cass, my brother Cass, retired from Camp Grafton at 40 years. He worked for the National Guard for 40 years. And then after that, down next to him would be my sister Marion. Now, she worked for the telephone company too, but her husband, she married a fellow who was in the Air Force, and they retired out of the Air Force. After 22 or 23 years, he retired from the Air Force. And she worked on they traveled all over, And my baby brother Richard, he painted for me. He went to Grand Forks and started up his own business in Grand Forks. Richard Kurtz was Richard Kurtz Painting and Son. And he died of cancer at 58, I think he was. No, 54. 54 years old. And like I say, my sister Marion is just before him, there. But that takes care of all 11 of us, what we did, But everybody, like I say, everybody had a job, and they worked. And I think my dad was proud. I think, after having 11 kids, and he's seen most of them, except my younger brother that died, all get married, have kids, grandkids and that, and all see them all own their own homes and that, And he had to be, you have to be proud of that, And like I say, my younger brother Richard was in the service, in the Army then, at that time. But he spent 3 years in the Army, and then he got out, and he painted for me. Then he went to Grand Forks and started up his own business. That would take care of all of our kids, but we all grew up right here.
Did you get along when you were
I would say if I told you we got along 100%, it wouldn't be true. We got along maybe 75. Yeah. There's always little skirmishes going on with 11 kids. How come he got that and I didn't get this, and that, But that's the way it goes in big families, Sure.
Who were you closest to out of your siblings?
My brother Richard. He was a baby in the family. And when my brother Richard was just a little tyke, and we were coming out of this depression business and all that. I worked for the railroad, and I lived at home, and that there. And if a kid had a bicycle and he wanted a bicycle, he got a bicycle from me, a wagon. Anything he wanted, he got from me. And there's a story in behind that one too, but that was just, I suppose you could say, not understanding. The story about my little brother Richard and myself, I did all other things for it. But my little brother Richard was born in this house, in the hospital in this house. But I never looked at him for over just about a year, never went around him. And one day my mother asked me why I didn't, and it was later in life. And I said, but to my mother, I said, Mother, you're too late now to ask me that. And she said, well, why? I said, Mother, because there were 10 of us in the family. And here comes another one. Now you got to understand my side, that side. But like I said, there was, one more. And you have to understand my side, And that's when I said, maybe my mother stopped to understand it. She always said, I had nothing to do with it. Yes, you did, Mother, First response, but it was. Maybe it was selfish in my part. I don't know. But we had nothing to speak of, And now here comes another one, But I made sure my brother Richard had everything that he wanted. Because, like I said, he was a baby in the family. And there were a lot of things I never had, But he had them. And really, and through life, he learned to paint for me. He painted for me and that. He went to Grand Forks, started up his own business. We'd work together back and forth in bidding. He'd bid in Grand Forks things. and I would help him there. I called him and asked him if he had different situations, But he'd been on churches and stuff, and I would tell him how I would bid the job and all that stuff, see. So we worked together, and I always, got along good with him, really. I went down to his house. He married in Grand Forks. I lived in Grand Forks, and that. Yeah, we got along. Maybe we got along like brothers should get along, But again, there's always a little jealousy or a little conflict if one does this, if one, and that, see. And I like sports, all kinds, you know what I mean, in that. And I did these things. I loved, like I told you, to play ball. I loved to play ball. And I played for Cheyenne for 3 years playing ball, And I played with some other guys, that were down there. We went down there. They had a team I couldn't play here, wasn't good enough, but I played for Cheyenne for 5 years, And that was a lot of fun. Take the kids and we all go down and play ball on Sunday afternoon. They had a big picnic afterwards at this park, and it was nice. It was a family outing, Went to that park and played, Played ball that Sunday afternoon and watermelon and all that stuff. My kids enjoyed it, see. We got away. Then when I played here, then they were all coming, and I got here, we played too. But like I said, playing ball was great. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you, you know what I mean? Maybe like I told you about my brother, I don't know if I was selfish or not. But growing up, being number one, in the middle, and knowing there's no new clothes or, all hand-me-downs or that, I hated short pants, always wanted a pair of long pants, and that, see. And I always cried, can I have a pair of long pants, Ma? These are the things, big families go at. But there were always hand-me-downs. And the kidding about shoes, that was all hand-me-down. See? They never threw nothing away in the fall of the year after, in the spring. School's over. Got a new pair of tennies. And when school started, there was nothing but threads left. All holes in them, you run them off. And you run barefooted. And you started school with a new pair of shoes. New pair of shoes, new pair of jeans, and that. Yeah.
Did your mom make any of your clothes?
Everything my mother could make, she made, She was more with the girls, making dresses for the girls, the 4 girls, yeah. She did that, But she'd do, and then patch, patch. That was a steady go. And I think one of my sisters, I got a singer sewing machine, something like that. I think one of my sisters have got that, She'd sit there with the foot, and yeah. And then later we put a motor on it, got a motor on it, and she could sew with the motor, a little motor on it, spin it for her and that, yeah. But she had a lot of sewing. And like I say, some days with my mother and my dad, and like I said, of understanding and stuff, sometimes I'll sit in that chair. That's where I sat before, and I sat there, and I bought a big radio, and I played Eddie Arnold records. Loved Eddie Arnold. Oh boy, and memorized songs, And I sit there now, and I think, that things were good, and but things were also tough, Didn't you have TV before your kids said no? We had a radio my uncle bought, One of my brothers got that, But I'm sitting just about in that same spot where I'm now. I sit in that chair. This is where I sat, probably more over there. And I'd listen to them records Sunday morning, hour after hour, memorizing all the time, the song. I think I had about every Eddie Arnold record that he ever put out. Eddie Arnold was, if you listen to country hits, one of them years he had every hit song every month of the year. He had them all, every hit song. And all he did was play guitar, and he had just a way of singing like Jim Reeves. I don't know if you ever listen to Jim Reeves today? Just as even, listen to him, just, remember now, Put that down and get a Jim Reeves record and listen to Jim Reeves sing. He makes you think, and everything goes along so nice, really. He's excellent. I like him. I have songs, the Gaithers. My wife loves singing. My wife sings, we like the Gaithers. We sit there and listen to, they have hour deals come out on tapes and that, yeah. And we listen to, they have fellows at quartets that sing and all that. Very good. They're all religious songs, We sit and listen to them for hours and that.
Now, was your family musical when you were growing up?
No. Mm-mm. I like music. And I like to sing, and with my wife, and stuff in there. But we, like my wife, my kids, all can sing. Yeah, and that. But no, my mother and dad sang. I got to say they sang in German right here. I remember standing there at a names day party, and the two and one lady playing a mouth organ and singing in German. See, Boy, when this room, you got to take this room now. That was a window there. And they'd have names day. That's how my name comes. Balzer comes off of the three kings, Caspar, Milliker, and Balthazar. That's where Balzer comes off of, see. And the 6th of January is the Three Kings Day. And that was a day that the carpet, the chairs rolled back to the walls and everything. And they got in here and they had a little burnt sugar and alcohol, a little homemade wine. And the neighbor across the street come over with an accordion. The lady come down with the marble and they played, they danced, and had a heck of a time on a names day. Really. And then after that, they maybe had 15, 20 people in here, And they'd sit out there and then they'd have like sausage, like a full meal, and that one in the evening at 12 o'clock. And us kids used to sit around. They all talked in German. That's how we learned German. You'd try to pick up them words, so you could understand what they were talking about, see? But they had a good time on a names day. And the names day presents they'd bring were either hankies or socks. Them were the big presents. Way back 20 years ago, we had a names day party out in my brother's house. I still have hankies from that day. But that was a big present then, hankies and socks. Christmas was a handful of peanuts, a little Christmas candy, and an orange or an apple if they could afford it. That was it. See?
Did you have Christmas trees?
Yeah. The ones with, they had, we had some with the candles you lit. We scrounged, us boys would scrounge up a tree. We had a tree. But, like I say, sitting right over there, the window was about where that chair was at. Yeah, like I say, we bought lights for it, That was big. Christmas was a big day. And Christmas started 2 weeks before Christmas. It didn't start before Thanksgiving. It started 2 weeks before Christmas. The tree went up, and you drew names, with the family and that, And then you had presents under the tree, and we always had Santa Claus come too. That was the thing there. In German, people that listen to German, we had a Santa Claus. Then we also had in German, it's a Bildschnickl. He was a mean dude. They come and check you out 3 days before Christmas. If you're good or bad, he'd come in, he'd smell it from. They had put booze on his coat and all this, and he had a whip from a willow. He'd drag a chain, along. He was mean, Then after that, about a few days later, they had the Grishkindl come. That was a lady that had a hat on and it hung down, a veil hung over it, all dressed up in color and that. And then she'd give you some candy, and she was real nice. They check it out if you're going to get anything. Then at Christmas time, somebody would come as Santa Claus and give you a present. But we'd sit here and wait for the American Legion or the Salvation Army to bring you something. Really, I remember pulling a little horse across the floor here. It came from the Salvation Army. It was on 4 wheels, and the horse sat on this little thing. You pull it around, Yeah. That was from there, It was big. There were no toys around, And like I say, you'd wait for them. But we had Christmas. My mother made Christmas bread, I mean, it's sweeter breads and that, that she made and that. But we'd always have Christmas. Christmas Day, you'd have a big ham that, from what my dad butchered. That was a special day, Christmas. And that. Easter was big, too. Dyeing eggs, and all that.
How did you dye eggs?
Out on the table when you got big enough so you could get the dye, and mix them up. But otherwise, the kids that were small were in bed. Never seen you dyeing eggs. See, even my own kids never seen me dye eggs. It was always when they were all in bed. But when they got up in the morning, the baskets were all out full of, candy eggs or candy and that regular one. I used to chew up a carrot and drop it by the door. And I had a German Shepherd, And they'd come down, and I'd lay a carrot there for the rabbit, and it was all chewed up with laying there. Oh, that dog got after that Easter rabbit. Look at that. He left half of that carrot there, just to get him, going. I have moving pictures of that stuff, and that. But my kids always celebrated Christmas with Santa Claus. Excuse me. We had Santa Claus come in all the time. I played Santa Claus for 15 years, and my brother Cass went along, and we had maybe 15 to 20 stops, and all we got was either cookies or milk, you know what I mean, maybe $1 or $2. But we weren't out for that. It was what was behind it. I played Santa Claus in town for the Chamber of Commerce and all that. I sat at the Memorial Building one day in town here we started at 2, and I was still there at 7 o'clock at night with kids on my knee talking to them what they wanted and all this and that. And finally they all got a big bag of candy, at that time. And I played Santa Claus for Montgomery Wards, sat down in the basement on Friday and Saturday, and they paid me. And I told the manager of the store, if I have one kid telling me, that's the truth, is that if I have one kid telling me he don't want nothing, but he wants this for his family, I'm going to buy that boy a present with the money I'm getting from you. I was close. That he didn't want it, but they all wanted something, and I don't blame them, See, but I enjoyed that. My wife didn't. We were last, when we played Santa Claus. I'm just saying, we were last when we played Santa Claus. My kids were last, see. And my brother and myself would go out and play. But I had my own suit, everything. We had a time and a half. And later times going, Everybody wanted to give you a drink, and not me, but I mean, that could lead into trouble for you. But no, it was a lot of fun. It was great to play Santa Claus, And maybe, like I said, I was involved in a lot of things. I, run for the city commission on a dare. I got on that city commission because somebody dared me to run. So I run, and I got on. And I was there 19 years, see? And like we were at the cemetery, I believe I left my mark in the cemetery. I enjoy it. I did a lot of work out there, and it's an enjoyable place to go. I have people still call me up today. I just had a lady call me the other day, and she said my husband, and I knew him well, and my husband's grave is black, got weeds all over it. And she said, Balzer, how do you get some black dirt? And I said, I'll take care of that for you. No, you're too busy in that. So I told her what to do. And that was just, this week when she called, but Tuesday. So I haven't got back to that guy to see that he took care of that grave for that lady. I went to school with this lady that called me, and I'm going to make sure that grave gets sodded or it gets grass seed and everything in there. That's the way I was before. People would call me, I took care of it right away. I got, so you didn't have somebody all the time, after you about something and that, see. But I did I'd go out there and I'd do it myself. When I was on the city, when I'm talking about this, and you carried a portfolio, cemetery. To know about a cemetery, I could tell you everything you want to know about a cemetery. From the time that you die till the time you go to a funeral home, what they do to you there, and everything, by the time you're in there, when they got you on display, driving the hearse out the cemetery, burying you, let you down in the grave, do all of that. All my friends, when I went to their funeral, I took the flowers that were from the family, I put them inside of the vault, and put the cupboard on. I did that. I went out there, and I've had, people said, well, does somebody think? No, they won't think. But I did put the family flowers inside of the vault, because inside of a week or two, they're gone, see? But them are inside now. They're going to stay there. See, I did that with it. But no, anything I got into, I did good. I said I was the best painter from Minneapolis to Seattle. Some guy says, you think a lot, huh? But I enjoyed painting. I enjoyed painting the friendship I made with priests, ministers, and everything, just like we're doing now, we're talking. And I would get a call, and I'd go look at a church, and then I'd study it, and I'd look, what we're going to do, how we're going to plan to do it, And then I'd go back inside of a week or two, and the ladies, the board was together. And then I'd sit there, or stand there, and they'd be all there, and I'd tell them how I'm going to paint the church for them. And I'm trying to think of the church over close to Minot, the big Catholic church there I painted. And they had got other bids. See, and I give them a bid, for the church, and then I explained everything, what I'm going to do and how it's going to look. When it got all done, this old fellow got up from the back in the pew. He said, now I understand what's going to be done here. I make a motion, we give him the painting. End of deal. I had the painting, and then I painted the church. We were there a whole month of November. We got out of there probably before Christmas, see. And it was enjoyable, because you start with nothing, and what you do then, And when I left, they were pleased, exactly what I told them. And I had all of that, I had good friendships, with priests and everything, to do a church, see. And it's just something about when you start talking to people, like we're doing now, visiting. It is nice to visit with them. Everybody's got an idea, And the thing is, I like this color, I like that color, and yeah, and then you listen and you try to work all this stuff in, And we painted a church up at Minto. That was big, really huge church. We were there 2 months, And we got done there, and I told my guys that are working, I said, you think that I bit off more than I could chew, but I said, the day's going to come where we're going to stand in the back of the church, and they're going to say, boy, Balzer, we got her done. And that's exactly what happened. We textured it, filled all the patch, all cracks, it was bad. And when we got all done, we had textured, painted the whole thing, varnished the pews, the works. And we stood in the back there when he said, we got done. We finished up after Christmas. Went back after the first year and finished up the sacristy. We started there in November, 1st of November sometime. And that's the time we finished it up in January. And it got all done. Father Richard was there. He was just pleased. And I got to tell you, this is another strange thing. We were up there painting that church, and I got to know him very well. My daughter got married in Arizona. And guess who married him? Father Richard from up there at Minto. That was retired, went down to Arizona and retired. And the priest wasn't around, so he married my daughter. And that he about dropped over when I told her it was my daughter. That, from painting a church and marrying my daughter in Arizona, that happened, see. And most of they are friends. And like I say, Father Gerald, all the priests, all of them are friends. I talked to Reverend Church. He was at the Methodist Church, I believe he was in there. His name was Church. Anyway, a young guy had a problem. He was, and I went to talk to him, and he said, well, why don't you go talk to your own priest about it, I said, he's Methodist, or, I said, but I like you, and I think you could talk to him on there. I said, your problem is you should have been a Catholic priest. Exactly what I told him. He just laughed, and he talked to the people. Really. Very nice man. And, when you get into that of talking to him and that, we all kind of get a little humbled, when you're talking religion. And really, and I got to say this to you, it's on TV, Catholics, Protestants, we're all the same. I found the same peace in a Lutheran church as I find in a Catholic church. And I found the same peace when I was in Korea in a Lutheran church as I did in a Catholic church, see? And I painted a lot of Lutheran churches, and I painted a lot of Catholic churches. And I got to be friends with all the ministers and everything, And always, like we painted them during the summer. I always went back at Christmas time and took the Christmas flower poinsettias. If I painted that church, or two churches, I always went back before Christmas and probably took 10, 15 poinsettias to the church, say, with them. And they appreciated it, but they were, how would I say, you started out as a customer, you ended up as a friend, when I worked there. Yeah, that's the way. So my dad coming from Russia, I inherited what he wanted, freedom, And I fought for my country, in freedom. And that's what I disagree with today, because they pick on Bush. Hey, Bush is a one man. He's just one guy. The man is trying to do it. And he's got advisors, because you can't run a country. It's tough to run a business with 5 guys, and especially when you're underfinanced to run a business. See? And Bush to run this country, I think he's doing a great job. All I want, Republican or Democrat, I'm not either. I'm a fence rider, I tell him. Just give me an opportunity to work, and I'll prove myself what I want to do. Same as you're sitting here and he's sitting there. You have the opportunity to do this. If you want to go on, doing these, that's exactly. See? Because what you do good. You never have to worry then, see? Yeah. Well, I've painted, and if somebody told me there was something, don't worry about it. I'll be back. And I went back and I fixed it. No charge. See? And that's why I enjoyed churches, and that to paint. And I had good customers. Like I said, going through that cemetery today, I got a lot of customers out there. See? And I met a lot of good people. See? And I always tell them I'm a legend in this town. Just in the kidding, with them and that, yeah. But Devil's Lake is a good town. We got good people in this town. And again, we're fighting the lake right now. We got dikes around the lake, and that's hurting. It helps. It helps in this hand and hurts in this hand. We got fishermen coming in here that you can't believe. Every day fishing in Devil's Lake. The walleye capital, and they're catching the fishing tournament. They just had one. Went out of here, I think, with about 60 pounds of walleye, first place in that. You got boat after boat after boat coming in every day, going out. Graham's Island is full, all summer long. All the camp spots that have came around, Minnewaca is filled, that people are coming from out of state to fish. And seeing back in the old days, they still go, not as much, to Canada, but they come here to fish. There's every kind of fish you want to do. We have nice camping spots here, We got stores here, But like as a small town, we're fading by the wayside. The one thing I always said in this town you need is to get people to move in, You need a good doctor, clinic. Then you need a good hospital. Then you need a good school system. High school, grade school, college, we have all that, We need these things to grow, see. Good kindergartens going on, do we have, for people in that. And we need good paying jobs, see. And how do you get good paying jobs when you're falling by the wayside, And one thing we've got going for us is the Camp Grafton. The government now, I think, is going to spill about $30 million in out there for the National Guard, for classrooms, and going to build and everything. That's going to come within the next few years. And I say to myself, a guy that thinks ahead, what is the offshoot going to be like? These people are going to train government, troops. But there's got to be a civilian half taking care of them government troops. And they're going to be on the outside, living in Devil's Lake, working in Devil's Lake, and are going to make decent money. That's going to help Devil's Lake. Maybe if we could stabilize the lake, we would grow then, see. You name it, we got everything you want to do. You want to fish and hunt, we got it. You want to play golf, we got it. You name it, and we've got it, see. But you're fighting, well, look at the small towns are fading away. Why? Because the roads are so good. See, traveling cars are good, in that there. And that's what my dad was looking for. My dad loved to fish. Where'd he go? He went to the Cheyenne River, caught bullheads. I said, I don't know what my dad to do today if I could take him just 2 or 3 miles out to the airport and set him off in a chair right by the water. Pa, I'll pick you up tonight. 5 o'clock, is that time you want to go home? He'd love that, just to go. He'd go down to the Cheyenne River and sit there all day and catch bullheads. And that's where he found his peace, I think, fishing and that. And like I said, when he came here, the Germans from Russia and that, that's what they looked for. I think religion was number one personally. And to have a freedom to have something to say, that you could say something without getting into trouble, see. And he did that. Maybe that's where I inherited a lot of that, I stick up for what I believe in, And I thank my mother and I thank my dad, for coming here and doing what he did. He raised 11 kids. And he's got to look down and be happy with 11 kids to know if there's 10 of us going to be married for 50 years. That's an accomplishment by itself, see. That all comes through what he believed in, religion. My mother believed in that, And once you get married, that's what that means, And I raised 6 kids. My kids are all up on the wall here, And I had 5 girls and 1 boy. And they're all doing great, They're all doing great. They're not, they're have their own homes and stuff, what I mean, and that. And I have 2 daughters and a son in Arizona, and they're doing good. And then my oldest daughter teaches school in Grand Forks. She's a 4th grade or 3rd grade teacher, in Grand Forks.